this is one of those happy clappy Christian places, isn't it? This is one of those weird places, that's all about God and about Jesus and all this sort of like stuff, and I thought, man, I want nothing to do with that stuff. I was just lost in this la la land of the Sydney rave scene, the Sydney rave and club scene, and you don't care. Like it's all about self, and self gratification, like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or rave parties for me in the 90s. And I really had no concern for anyone or anything.
We have a good friend of mine on the show, and his name is Robby. He is a very important person to us, Deborah and myself. He married us. He did such a beautiful ceremony on the day of our wedding. So very excited to have this conversation with you today, Robby. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Thanks for having me on, Raf.
If you can tell us a little bit if you have always believed in God.
Have I always believed in God? No, I haven't always believed in God. I think when I was younger, I kind of got involved in doing little experiments, like witchcraft experiments. And one day I was testing out this little, it's like a Ouija board, or it's something like that, but a little bit different. But I was shocked one day when I realized I was actually talking to a spirit, and this spirit was actually communicating with me, via this little personal Ouija board that someone at school taught me how to do it. So anyway, it blew me away, and from that moment, I guess, I started doing it with friends in high school. We started doing seances together and all this sort of stuff. But really just out of fun, I would say we would do it when we would go and have a few drinks, and someone would be like, yeah, let's get the Ouija board out and whatever. And I remember, one day we got this spirit so angry. And I mean, this spirit would speak to us. It's real. There would be a glass, and it would be moving, and it would be no one was moving it. It was literally starting to move on its own. And this glass, one day, it literally flew off the table and smashed into the wall all on its own, into 100 pieces. And that
crazy.
Literally freaked us out. I think, because I think we got really angry. I think because we were little smart ass teenagers. And, and then I reckon that really sort of got me thinking, that, hey, there is more to life than what we see. There's some kind of spirit world out there, because, we're actually communicating with a spirit, and I'm sure there's others out there. So if there's a spirit, then maybe God is real, and anyway, you don't really think too much about it when you're young. You sort of think, oh, okay, whatever. And then you continue on with your life of, sex, drugs, and dance parties back in the 90s. Yeah. Anyway, after years and years and years, honestly, it was years and years, or maybe 7 years later, 6 or 7 years later, I read this book from a friend of mine. He gave me this. I think I was in his car one day, and I found it in the back of his car. And it was a book on, it was like a new agey book. I think it was called The Seed of the Soul, actually. And I started reading it while I was in the back of his car, and I thought, man, this is really cool. Can I borrow it? And then I borrowed it off him. And then, as I was reading it, it totally resonated with me, what I was reading was it was so inviting, and I really so felt that what I was learning in this book was so true. But then when I got to this one part of the book, which didn't resonate with me so much, I think it was on reincarnation or something like that. And then when I got to that book, that part of the book, I was so disappointed. It's like I threw the book down one night, and I went out into the backyard, and I just said, I said universe, because I think that's what this book called, God. I said, universe or God or whatever your name is, I want to know the truth, because I really believed that this book was the truth. I believe that I was looking for the truth. Really, when I was reading this book, I just wanted to know the truth. And so I cried out to God for the truth. And I just said, I just want to know the truth. One person says that, that Buddha is God. Another person says that Allah is God. Another person says that this is God. Another person says, but I want to just know you. I want to know God. I know you can hear me, and I just want to know the truth. I just want to know you. And honestly, it's the first time that I ever heartfelt, genuinely, faithfully prayed or just cried out to God, really. That's the first time I ever heard God speak to me. I remember that night I was in my backyard and I didn't hear it like as an audible voice, but I felt his voice in my heart and I heard the words, "Don't worry, everything's going to be all right." And then I just sat on the chair in the backyard where I was, and I just felt peace. I just literally felt peace, and I rested. I had no idea what was going on, really. I just knew that I cried out to the universe or God or whatever it is. That's all I knew at that time. Really, all of this started making sense to me later, really. And then a few weeks later, a friend of mine, I hadn't heard from him in quite some time. He rings me up and he says, I went to this crazy not a conference, but it was some kind of event last night down in Wollongong Entertainment Centre. There was thousands of people there. And there was a guy and he was talking about Jesus, right? He said that they were giving away free Bibles, right? My friend, this is the same friend that I borrowed the New Age book from. And so he had started reading the Bible only a few weeks prior to this phone call, right? As he was talking to me about what he was reading, right? And he didn't tell me who was reading the Bible. He would just quote verses from the Bible as I was, sharing about what I had learned from that book that I'd borrowed from him, And so anyway, when he was speaking, I was like, wow, I love what you're saying. Where do you get all this information from, And he goes, well, I was at my girlfriend's house a few weeks ago and I was just sitting by the telephone table and I saw the Bible and I just started reading it and I've never read it in my life. And he said, I just haven't been able to put it down. When he said that he was reading the Bible, I was like, at first there was this big wall that came up and I was like, damn, bro, why did it have to be the Bible? Like I really was loving what you were saying until you actually said it was the Bible, And then, after I put the phone down and I stopped and I thought about my reaction, and I thought to myself, why did I react that way? Look, I've never read the Bible in my life. Like I've literally had never read, not even a page. And I thought, why did I react to the Bible like that? And I believed it was some kind of offense that I had towards Christians or the church or whatever, but that was deep inside, but I didn't know. And then I thought, that's really strange because I'm the type of person that I would never judge anything until I give it a go. Like I'll always have to try something before I say, it's good or bad. How can you actually say this is good or bad if you've never even experienced it, or gave it a try? And so I thought, you know what? I want to read the Bible. That's what I said to myself. I said, that's going to be my next book. And then what happened was a few days later, this is when my friend called me and he said they're giving away free Bibles, right? Because to me, I was brought up Orthodox, right? Macedonian Orthodox. And so no one reads a Bible in Macedonian Orthodox community. Like it's something that the priest has, and that's it. And you don't know where it comes from. I had no idea where you could get a Bible from. I had no idea that you can go down to your local bookstore and buy one. I just thought that there was some kind of holy thing that they came from somewhere special. And then when I heard there was actually Bibles that they were, giving away, I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to get my hands on one of these things. So my friend said he's going back the next night to this event in Wollongong. And so I said, and he goes, do you want to come? And I said, yeah, for sure. I'm coming. I'm going to come and I'm going to get myself one of these Bibles, and I knew the type of event that he was talking about, right? Because, I thought, okay, this is one of those happy clappy Christian places, isn't it? This is one of those weird places, that's all about God and about Jesus and all this sort of like stuff, and I thought, man, I want nothing to do with that stuff. Like, I'm going to go there and I'm going to sit down. I'm going to be quiet. I'm not even going to look at anyone. I'm not going to talk to anyone. I'm going to just grab my Bible once they give it away and I'm out of there and I'm going to read that thing, and that was my plan. Like, that's what I went there for. Anyway, I got there and then there's a man talking about Jesus, right? And he was sharing about Jesus, about who he was, that he was the Son of God, that he came and to actually die so that I can have life. And I could actually have this eternal life right now. Honestly, as this man was speaking, and this is not the first time I'd heard this message, mind you. I'd heard this message many times before, for years, for maybe 5, 6, 7 years, more, 10 years maybe. And it wasn't the first time. But this time, it was like I heard it for the first time. And my heart was resonating as this man was talking about Jesus. There was such a desire for what this man was offering. And inside, it was like, everything this man is saying, I need. Whatever he's got, whatever he's talking about, I need. But at the same time, there was this battle inside me. I guess I had lived a life of like just crazy like sex, drugs, and rave parties for 7 years prior to that, And I knew that if I was to go down this path, I would have to give up all of this stuff, It was like, should I do this or shouldn't I? If I do this, I'm going to have to give up all this stuff. I'm going to get looked at as some kind of weird Christian. I'm going to get people are going to ridicule me. They're going to not like me. They're going to talk about me, about my beard. They're going to laugh at me. I'm not going to be like the most popular person anymore, And popularity was a big thing for me back then. Like literally, I was a DJ in the Sydney rave scene and in the nightclub scene, and I was doing parties and I would play sets. There was so much I knew I would have to give up. But I knew deep inside that what this man was talking about, this Jesus that he was talking about, was everything that I had been searching for these last 6-7 years of just wild living,
What did this guy say for you to realize that what he was saying and what he was talking and saying about Jesus is what you actually wanted? What did he say?
Well, he was saying that you could have eternal life. And I'll tell you what, literally, it was kind of like I had a whole bunch of friends that went in one direction, and then there was a whole bunch of other friends that went in another direction, and they would tell us about Jesus. They would tell us about the reality of heaven and hell. They would tell us about all this stuff, we would just, at that time, we would just tell them to just shut up because we didn't want to hear about it. We thought we just weren't ready. It's like, get out of here. I don't want to hear that stuff, but deep inside, the words that they spoke were the truth. Okay. And the truth, right, whether you believe it or not, is still the truth. There was just this deep-seated truth about the reality of heaven and hell. And I truly didn't believe I was going to heaven. One day I'm not going to be here, my body's not going to make it forever here, and I'm going to actually end up in one place or another, heaven or hell. And I thought, man, I want to go to heaven. That's where I want to go. It was that same desire that I had 3 weeks prior. It was only 3 weeks before. Just remember, that was 3 weeks before when I had that encounter in my backyard. It felt like the same peace like that I experienced 3 weeks before. And it was like, I just knew that I needed to say yes to what this man was offering.
And when you listened to him talking and you felt this is what I want, how was your process of, I guess, internal transformation from DJing and like listening to this music in those raves and doing sex, drugs, and partying? And then what happened after when you listened to this message? How was your life transformed after that?
Wow. Well, how was my life transformed? Well, I tell you what. All I know is that the moment I stood up, I instantly felt the power of God come deep within my spirit, and it was like I became alive. That's the only way I can explain it. It was like life came into me, love came into me, light, truth. It was the Holy Spirit which was actually became alive in me, It so changed my world. It rocked me, like literally turned me upside down, because I just knew I was one with God. I knew I had received what I was looking for. And that night, I remember I made a decision to let go of that old life. Literally, I knew that I had to let go of this old life, because it was the life of, honestly, I was the worst person ever. I'm telling you, I was just lost in this la land of the Sydney rave scene, the Sydney rave and club scene. And you don't care. Like, it's all about self, and self-gratification, like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or rave parties for me in the 90s. And I really had no concern for anyone or anything. When this happened to me, I instantly knew I am leaving this old life behind, and I am starting a new life from today. Instantly, the moment I stood up and that thing happened I can't even explain it in a million words, but all I know is that the way that I saw life was very, 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 very different. I think I was just so in love with everything and everyone. Life in general, God was like with me. I was one with God, and I walked around like I was on cloud nine. Like I didn't change my life straight away. Like I have to admit, I was still involved in that scene. So what happened was in that year and a half. So my friend that I went there with to this event, he also got saved that day, right? Both of us, literally on that same day. Like we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And honestly, my friend and myself, we were the church for the first year and a half. Like we both got our Bibles that day. We went home. I could not put that thing down. I read it and read it and read it every day. And like he would read his Bible, I would read mine. And every couple of days, we would get together and we would constantly chat about what we've been reading in the Bible, what we were experiencing with our new life, you know. Honestly, we were the church. It was just two of us coming together and just sharing what God was doing, you know. And that was how things were in the first year and a half. But I was still involved in this great big community of like, you know, crazy people and crazy things. And so I would still go out and I'll still take ecstasy and cocaine and all kinds of stuff. And I'll tell people about Jesus while I was on all these, like, you know, but slowly but surely, it took about, I don't know, maybe a year or two. I can't remember how long, but slowly but surely I could feel that what I was doing was not good, you know, and all I wanted was good. I didn't want bad anymore. I didn't want a bad life. All I wanted was what was good, what was true, what was right, what was pure, what was holy. That's all I wanted. That was a desire in me. And slowly this stuff all just started disappearing. You know, my life started changing in every way. I guess I started thinking about other people more. I started thinking about loving other people, you know, like thinking about them before myself, like actually doing kind acts for them, you know, rather than being so selfish. I don't know, just so many things started shifting and changing after that moment.
In your life as a Christian, what would you say has been your biggest struggle or challenge? Because everything has been good, but has there been any moments where things have been tough? And how have you been able to navigate those tough seasons as a Christian with God, with Jesus?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Good question. The biggest struggle I've had as a Christian is the same struggle that I had on that night when I had a decision to follow God or to follow myself. And so therefore, myself has been my biggest problem. My biggest issue, my biggest hurdle, my biggest struggle. It's my mind, my thoughts, my will, my emotions, my, you know, the ego man, the flesh. Some people call it the flesh, some people call it the ego, whatever it is, it's myself, you know, and so this has been my biggest problem. And you know, it's almost been 25 years since that day. And I have to admit, you know, there's still times when it's a battle, you know. But I tell you what, this is the journey of the believer. This is the journey of humanity, is as a spirit being, you know, to learn how to govern. You know, God's given us an authority in this world to govern, to rule, to reign, to create. And I'll tell you what, there's only one thing that we really, truly, truly, truly need to govern. And that's us. That's ourselves. And we'll continue, I believe, for the rest of my life.
I would say it's the biggest lesson you've had in life from your mistakes.
I tell you what, the biggest lesson is how much the flesh has its way in everyday life, the minds, the thought, thinking. You know, my biggest enemy. See, I'm not afraid of the devil. I'm not afraid of Satan. I'm not afraid of any demonic spirits or anything like that. Honestly, I'll tell you who I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of this battlefield in the mind, right? It's the battlefield of the mind. Because this thing, this ego, this flesh, me, right? It's the false self, is so cunning and deceitful, will try everything it possibly can to get its own way. Like, it's so clever, you know. And I've learned that I get played by my own self a lot. And I mean, look, as you grow, you know, you learn how not to. This is the beautiful thing. You know, after 25 years, you learn some stuff, you know, but I have to admit that would be the biggest lesson that I've learned.
Throughout your process for the last 25 years, you've met so many people. If you were to meet anyone out there who is feeling empty, lost, out of hope, desperation, what would you say to that person?
I would say, look, never stop looking deep within yourself, within your heart. Like listen to your heart. Do everything you possibly can to listen to your heart, to follow your heart. I mean, when I say that, this is your spirit being. This is the eternal spiritual part of you that will continue to live on forever. But it's a matter of connecting with that part of ourself, because what happens is that the mind, the soul, the flesh sometimes takes such a position in the human being of having the first rank that the spirit is suppressed so much because we're thinking so much. We're constantly thinking. We're so caught up and bombarded, especially in this world of information that we live in these days as well. It's harder than ever before, you know. And I believe doing things like becoming still, like through meditation, practicing to just learn how to still your thoughts in any way you possibly can, any type of meditation you can think of, to learn to help your mind to settle down, become present. You know, even breathing, honestly, just listen to your breath, just doing breath work, learning to breathe and tune in and listen to your thoughts, being able to watch your thoughts, being able to step back and observe your own thoughts. This is how you get to know yourself, because you can see how your thoughts rise up. You can see where they come from. You can learn how to discern the difference between your thoughts and God's thoughts, you know.
And if I would ask you, this is my last question to you, Robby, what would you say is the purpose of life?
Oh, wow. I think the purpose of life, this is a really good question, Raf. I would say would be the purpose of life would be to actually have this relationship with God and to co-create with him, right? And that involves creating bambinos, babies, just like just like you guys, you know, because what better blessing is there on the earth, literally, than family? This is the purpose of life. God wants us to be blessed in every way, and the desires of our heart he puts in. And if your desire is to have a wife and children and to create a family, this is the purpose of life. It's to actually be blessed and to love life to the fullest, to have so much fun and joy and laughter and eat cake, you know. This is the purpose of life, you know, like to go for beach walks and look at the stars and the clouds, you know, and the beautiful mountain, go for hikes in the mountains. Like this is the purpose of life, you know, just to enjoy the wonderful abundant blessings of God, you know. And honestly, that's as simple as it is. It's not very hard.
That's right. Sometimes I think we complicate it too much, and
Yeah.
that's a simple but yet beautiful answer, Robby. Thank you very much for your time, for sharing your testimony. It was such a good time, and thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, Raf. Yeah, blessings of you and Deb and your precious new little bambino coming very soon. Can't wait to see the pickies, and yeah, really excited for you guys. So love you guys. Thanks so much for having me.